Welcome into the first ever Can't See Julio's face. That's not good. We got to be able to see Julio here. Hold on. Let me get Julio back in here. There's a ton of Julio right there. Julio, are you there with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can see you. We can hear you.
Nice. Perfect.
I don't know why this thing did this, though. It messed up. Gosh dang it. Well, I am Sonny, and I'm the only one you can see right now. But with me in studio is also Julio, and we're working diligently to make sure you can see him, because I thought I had this all figured out, but I messed it up, Julio. But Julio, how the heck are you, bro?
You know what? I am doing just fine. Got a really beautiful view out the window. It's a sunny day. Just had breakfast. Did my yoga class this morning. I'm feeling good.
Nice, nice. And Julio, you work for Bridgeway Recovery Services with me, and well, you don't work with me, but you work in the same place as I do. And what is your role at Bridgeway?
I am the clinical supervisor for our problem gambling programs. So I supervise both the outpatient problem gambling services as well as the residential problem gambling services house, the Sanium house. And
how long have you worked at Bridgeway for?
It's going to be 4 years in June.
4 years in June. That's awesome. And if you had to describe what Bridgeway is, how would you describe Bridgeway to people who maybe have never heard of Bridgeway before?
I would say Bridgeway is an integrated healthcare organization. And basically what that means is we help people take care of themselves and we support them in their wellness and their health. A lot of the focus of what Bridgeway does is on recovery from addiction. And so what that means is we have outpatient and residential programs to help people that are dealing with chemical dependency or alcoholism. We also look at behavioral addiction. So that's kind of my department. We look at gambling addiction. So we have an outpatient and a residential program for people that are dealing with gambling addiction. I mean, you're doing the adolescent services. So we're working with the youth as well. And I mean, your services are, particular to that population and the way that you work. We've got outpatient mental health for people that are dealing with anxiety or depression or trauma or any other type of mental health issues that might be coming up for them. And we also have primary care. So people could come to Bridgeway to see a doctor that understands addiction. And one of the things we really try to do in the way that we work is to decrease the stigma of addiction. So with people that are dealing with addiction, what they really need is they need support, they need care, and they need compassion. And at Bridgeway, I think we do a really great job at having those be some of the things that guide our work with people.
Thank you, Julio, for describing Bridgeway. I know it's a big organization that does a lot of things. And if you had to sum up why there is such a stigma against people who struggle with substance use and sometimes potentially mental health stigma as well, why is that still out there? And what can we do more to reduce that?
I think sometimes it's hard to recognize the places where we struggle. And none of us really want to struggle. And so when we see other people struggling, sometimes it can be pretty easy to kind of look down on them and kind of blame them for their issues. But really, addiction is something that can affect anybody. It doesn't discriminate, right? Addiction can happen in any family. There's a lot of things that can definitely predispose you to it, but it's not something that somebody chooses. And I think that's one of the things in the old way of thinking, is that addiction was some type of moral failing or just poor choices that somebody is making. And now I think while there's still stigma, I think there's more of an understanding that addiction is a disease and that it's actually not something that people choose, but something that is either, genetically inherited, or maybe somebody had some traumatic experiences in their life that they're needing relief from. So there's a way to look at addiction through more compassionate eyes. And so that's kind of the work that we're really trying to do even here right now.
Yes. And right now, this is called the Bridgeway Beacon Livecast. So me and Julio, as Julio stated, we both work for Bridgeway. It's a recovery program for people in the Salem area, doing lots of different services. And because we're all trapped in our houses and we're staying home and staying safe, because I care about you, Julio, I don't want to see you in person right now. So we've decided to go to the interwebs and the YouTubes of the world and bring some information around some general topics to kind of serve our clients, but also serve people maybe who aren't clients of Bridgeway right now. And so we'll be doing these, probably hoping to do once a week. And this is called the Bridgeway Beacon Livecast. It's episode 1. And today's topic is about managing your anxiety. And so Julio is a very sharp young guy. I've always respected Julio because he's the type of guy who remembers what he reads in college. And I greatly appreciate that about him. And he has a plan, which is awesome.
There it is.
All right, Julio. So we're all staying home. We're not going out because we care about one another. And we don't know how long this is going to end. It's an unknown ending date to this. It's causing a lot of anxiety in the clients I'm working with. And I'm sure you as well, you're seeing the same results. And also just in people in general, man, I'm having some anxiety around this and stuff like that.
Me too. Absolutely.
So let's jump in. What's one way we can help manage our anxiety while we're kind of going through this?
Well, I mean, even before that, just talking a little bit about what anxiety is for. People are getting really sick from it. People are dying from it. That's terrifying. Mm-hmm. That's actually happening right now, right? So, I mean, anxiety shows up as like a form of like restlessness, which can show up just because you're being cooped up. But it's also like this sense of anticipating something negative happening in the future, mm-hmm. right? So maybe I'm going to get sick. Maybe I'm going to get laid off. There's so many things to worry about right now because of what's going on, because of the current situation that we're in. And the problem with anxiety is that it feels really uncomfortable. In your body, you might feel like your heart starts beating quicker. You might start getting sweaty palms, or, you might start kind of shaking. Different things like that can happen. And it can be really uncomfortable, and it can be really easy to kind of get stuck there. So I think what we're talking about today is, what do we do if we find ourselves in that situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. I'm restless, Julio. Help me.
Okay, let me help you out. So one of the most basic and quickest things that we can use as a tool to work with anxiety is actually something that we're doing all of the time. It's something that we've been doing since we were born. It's actually using our breath, right? So one of the things that happens when we are stressed, which can lead to anxiety, is that our body, our nervous system goes into this like fight or flight response. It feels like an emergency. And so my body feels like it's in an emergency. And so one of the things that will change is how I breathe. And usually when I'm feeling stressed or anxious, my breath gets really shallow and it gets really quick. So if I notice that my breath is shallow or quick, because I have access to like changing what my breathing feels like, I can take a deep breath, and that can actually bring me back into my body, and it can actually switch my nervous system from being in that fight or flight place to being in this rest and digest place. So do you want to try maybe some deep breathing so we can help you with your restlessness?
Like me personally?
Yeah, right now.
Oh, you put me on the spot here, Julio. Yeah, I've breathed a couple times before. I can do this. Okay,
sounds good. And for anybody watching, you can also join us. And so what you want to do when you're doing this type of breathing is you want to inhale, and you want to visualize the air going to the bottom of your lungs and coming from the bottom of your lungs all the way up to your clavicles, right?
Okay.
When you're breathing in, you also want your belly to be pushing out, right? So
I shouldn't have a problem doing that.
Yeah, just make it a little bit bigger when you breathe in, okay? So here's what we'll do is we'll take a deep breath in. So go ahead and start breathing in.
Okay.
Yeah, deep like that. Yeah, and then when you get to the top, when you can't breathe in anymore, just hold it for a second and then breathe out fully. And what I mean by fully is when you feel like you're done exhaling, push out a little bit more. Then when you're done, take another deep breath in. Your belly goes out, your lungs are getting full from the bottom to the top. You hold it at the top and then you exhale. And let's just do one more, Sunny. So once you push out all the air, breathe back in, belly goes out, air comes from the bottom to the top. Breathe out, push out a little bit longer. Now tell me how you feel.
I feel relaxed.
Did that make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, and I know you're going to do this, and we've done it before, but I'm always amazed at how not simple the answers are, but how simple some of the techniques are. We breathe every day, but how often do we pay attention to our breathing? And you're so right.
Exactly.
When we get worked up and excited and anxious, our breathing is so erratic that we possess the tools to simply calm ourselves down. And it feels like it's almost, yeah, it's almost magic, Julio, to a certain degree.
It's like literally a lever that you can pull to switch yourself from that state of being in emergency mode to being in safety mode. And so just by becoming aware of our breath and by sort of taking control of it and deepening it and slowing it down, it actually switches us from one side to the other.
Yeah, no.
I've got one more breathing exercise that I want to show you real quick.
Okay.
That can be really helpful.
I'm already pretty relaxed, Julio. Do I need to breathe more?
Well, you're going to keep breathing no matter what, I hope.
Okay. Yes, this is
okay. True. But this one, the reason I want to share this one is because one of the components in anxiety is thinking, right? There's a lot of thinking going on, worry, concern, apprehension, all this stuff, right? And so sometimes even when we're trying to take deep breaths like we just did, thinking can still be doing wily stuff over here. So this breathing exercise actually helps us do something with the mind while we're breathing. So it keeps us a little bit more calm, right? And so it's called square breathing. And the reason it's called square breathing is because you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, and you start back over.
Okay.
So let's do maybe one round.
Sure, one round.
Okay. So you start inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds, and you hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. So that's one round.
Julio, would you say that half of the breathing, what makes it work, is that you're gaining control of your body? Like your body's reacting to whatever's going on emotionally, and by breathing, you're regaining control of it, and you're telling it what to do instead of your body telling you what to do and think?
That's 100% what's happening, Sonny, because what really dictates our experience of anxiety is what's happening in our nervous system, right? So when you think about our mind and our thinking, that's sort of like our software. If you think about like how we get programmed and like, you know, what we learned growing up and what we learned in school and all that stuff, but our hardware is our brain and it's our nervous system, right? And so kind of like I was telling you, our nervous system has 2 settings. There's the setting for emergency mode, which is really focused on short-term survival. And then there's the other setting, which is safety mode, which is more focused on long-term survival. And actually, one of the really interesting things about that is when we go to short-term survival, that actually decreases our immune system response. So it actually, if we're feeling very anxious and stressed, that actually makes us more susceptible to the COVID virus, right? Just because our immune system starts to get a little bit compromised. But if we use the breathing, if we use other techniques to go into safety mode, that actually increases our immune system response. So that's one way to actually allow your immune system to do what it's supposed to do, which is keep us safe and keep us healthy.
So square breathing and really deep breathing is actually a direct way to fight against your susceptibility to the coronavirus. That's legit, Julio. That's legit.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
Number 2, Julio, what's your second tip, if you can top the first one, because the first one was pretty good?
Yeah, the first one is absolutely my favorite. The second one is one of the things that happens when we go into emergency mode is the body starts to release adrenaline, epinephrine, and all these chemicals that what they essentially do is they give us energy. And it gives us the energy that we're going to need to either fight whatever's, the threat, to run away from whatever the threat is, or the other one is to freeze, to kind of like play dead and kind of survive in that way. They're all geared towards survival, but what it does is, I don't know if you are an adrenaline junkie, like I can be sometimes, but when I get really excited, sometimes my hands like start shaking. I have all this energy, right? And that energy can feel really uncomfortable, especially if it doesn't have something to do. So if the breathing isn't enough and there's still some energy in the body, the next thing that you can do is movement. And so by movement, I mean literally anything that helps you burn off that energy. You can go for a run. You can do jumping jacks. You can do some squats. You can do push-ups. You can put some music on and just start going crazy dancing. You can just shake, right? Even just shaking this off can let some of that anxious energy go away. But basically what you're trying to do is burn that excess energy and tire out the body. And that does a couple of things. One is it gets you out of the mind, right? We were talking about how anxiety lives in the mind and it's this kind of thinking that goes forward. If I start feeling my body getting tired from doing push-ups, it gets me out of the mind, right? If I start feeling tired from doing too many jumping jacks, not only do I want to stop because I'm tired, but when I stop, I'm starting to rest again, which we're doing that switch again from going to this emergency mode to going to this rest mode. So basically anything that gets you in your body and that burns some of that excess energy can be really helpful. So movement is that second tip.
So in that tip, anxiety is almost just too much.
Yep, that's it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you doing in your life for movement right now? Like what's one of the tips you're doing in your personal life?
I actually started doing an early morning yoga class. Well, it's not really early morning. Before this, I was like waking up and doing workouts at 5. Now my early morning is 8:30. But I do an 8:30 yoga class. And in our class today, we did some dancing and then we also did some shaking. We did a lot of this stuff. Like this can be really helpful. Try this.
Didn't Taylor Swift tell us to do this a couple years ago?
Try that.
Yeah.
So what does that do? Doesn't that kind of feel good?
It makes me look like an idiot, Julio. No.
it does kind of make you look kind of funny, but it does feel good. And actually with movement, it's not about like, should I do exercise or should I dance or should I stretch?
Moving. It's just moving, right?
And it's doing something that feels good.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Something that feels good in the body, right? So if push-ups feel good, do that. If dancing feels good, do that. If going on a bike ride feels good, do that. That should really be the guide.
It's interesting because I've noticed since we've been having to work from home, I have a small space that I've set up to do this, but I've been riding my bike a ton. Like I'll ride it early in the morning around 5:45 to kind of like get out and just reflect on the day and plan my day. But also I'll have a couple back-to-back sessions and I'll just feel the need to just get up and do something.
Sure.
I didn't really know why or where that was coming from, but it sounds like it was that. And so I'd go ride my bike around the block couple days, more than others, riding further. But when I come back, I'm ready to go again. I'm geared up, and again, it's almost magical how it works. But it seems like both of these last things are really in our control, right?
Yes. Yep. And that's part of it too, is just taking that control back from the anxiety.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one, Julio. You got breathing and you got movement. What's the third thing?
Okay, so the first two have to do with the body, right? The breathing has to do with the body. The movement has to do with the body. This last one has to do with what we do with our mind, and it's about redirecting your attention, right? So if you're starting to notice that you are feeling anxious, right, and you start to check in with what's happening in your thinking. If you're noticing that your thinking is very sort of catastrophic, it's really worried about what's going to happen, it's really uncomfortable with the uncertainty, it's concerned about, will I have a job tomorrow? Will I get sick? Will somebody in my family get sick? When is this going to stop? When can I go back outside, right? It's just this ongoing loop that just doesn't help us feel better. If you could change the channel. So like my suggestion, like one of the ways to redirect, and I think one of the most powerful ways to redirect our attention is to start looking for things that you can be grateful for, right? Because if you're quarantined at home, you have a home, right? If you're quarantined at home and you're snacking, you have food, right? If you're quarantined at home and you're super bored, you might actually not be sick. So you can start looking for things that exist in your life right in this very present moment that you could be grateful for. And if you start looking at that instead and start feeling a sense of appreciation for those things, it sort of changes the frequency. It sort of changes the channel so that you don't have to be so focused about something that's happening in the future. You kind of, it's about taking that power back again, bringing it back into the present moment and looking at what do I have right in this moment that I could be grateful for, that I might be taking for granted in this anxious type of thinking. So you could do that. Just go ahead.
Oh, just an attitude of gratitude, right? Always kind of trying to.
100%. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Looking for the things that are going well, you know, because even in this quarantine, like one of the things that happens is, and it could be a good thing, is just like we get to see our loved ones more. We get to spend more time with our family. I mean, that could go either way,
sometimes,
right?
But too much time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that can create some anxiety in and of itself. But you know, there's definitely always things that are happening right now that we can acknowledge that are things to be grateful for. So you can do that as a thought exercise. Another way that you can do some redirecting your attention is like journaling. So if you want to write down the list of the worries you have, and then once you write the list of the worries, because if you have all those worries in your mind, they're just going to repeat. It's just going to be a loop. But if I write them all down and say, okay, those are all my worries, I'm just going to set those aside. I'm going to do something else now, right? Or you could also do some journaling around things that I feel grateful for, or I could just do some journaling about how I feel. I could write about how scary this is. I could write about how uncertainty feels so uncomfortable, whatever it is, right? But it's basically just directing our attention in a different direction than the anxious thinking.
And is the concept of thinking about things you're grateful for, is that to kind of bring you back to the present moment and instead of future tripping and all that stuff, it brings you back to the here and now, the reality of the situation and what's really happening in the moment? Is that kind of the thought process behind that?
Yeah. Yep. That's one of the effects of it, right? Because that's the thing, is anxiety is so uncomfortable because it's not happening right now.
Correct.
It's about what might happen. And if you think back to times where you've been anxious in the past and you were to collect all the things that you've worried about and how many of those things have actually happened.
Yeah. The worry is worse than the actual event itself. Correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
Most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's like if I'm living in the future, I actually don't have access to the future unless I have a time machine. And I don't know. I mean, some people maybe figure that out, but I haven't. But bringing myself back into the present moment and looking at what I have right now with an attitude of appreciation can be really helpful.
That makes sense. That's good, Julio. All right, man. Well, I was anxious about this show. And when it first started, we couldn't see you, but the worry was far worse than the actual event itself. So, yeah. So, again, this has been the first episode of the Bridgeway Beacon Livecast. Julio Iniguez, right?
You got it.
Yes. Clinical Supervisor of Problem Gambling, joined us to give us 3 ways to kind of help manage anxiety. And again, that was deep breathing, square breathing, really any type of breathing that helps kind of recenter yourself and recenter your focus. Movement, exercise, Taylor Swift hands, push-ups, jumping jacks, whatever it is, movement. Your anxiety needs a place to go. And so move, be moving. And lastly, it was redirecting your thoughts to maybe things you're grateful for and an attitude of gratitude, and all simple, easy ways that we can all control and manage our own anxiety. Julio, anything else before we go?
I think we covered it, Sonny. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, appreciate you joining me. And hopefully if Mr. Murphy approves, we'll do it again.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Have a good day.
Hey, you too.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.